I want to tell you a story. A long time ago, in a galaxy surrounding the Sol system, a team of talented video game developers introduced a generation of players to a whole new universe. The known universe pulses with life. It's a teeming, vivacious mass, effectively constituting a cosmic melting pot, where sentient species gather to exchange knowledge, history, culture, art, goods, and services. Intergalactic society flourishes under a common legislative and cultural banner. The advancements of current civilizations are built upon the legacy of an incredibly advanced precursor race, one that mysteriously vanished from the universe many eons ago, leaving their wondrous technologies behind for future civilizations to find, but with little clue as to where they all suddenly went. Against this backdrop, a venerated human military leader commands a squad of interstellar races, united under a common cause. Life in the galaxy proceeds as normally as one can expect galactic affairs to proceed, until one fateful day. During the course of their adventures, our hero is inexplicably given an ominous glimpse of another moment in time, one where a mysterious and terrifying unknown race of beings wage total war on all the known sentient creatures in the galaxy. Civilizations are destroyed, worlds are torn apart, and billions upon billions of lives are extinguished in the cataclysm. Our hero stands helpless, a paralyzed witness to the end of all things. Before everything they can fathom is reduced to dust and memories, they're suddenly thrown back to the present, meeting their current reality with an uncomfortable mixture of relief and abject terror. Armed with the knowledge of the upcoming end of the world, our hero proclaims the looming threat to any allies who will listen, only to be met with apprehension and skepticism. Rallying those who can be convinced, they assemble an all-star team from across the cosmos, as a diverse league of species all band together, united and determined to survive the unseen monsters that lie just beyond the horizon of time and space. They learn that this race of destroyers has come before and will come again. A terrifying legion of beings whose only goal is to harvest all existing biological life in the cosmos, reaping them like genetic crops, and leaving the galaxy with no choice but to perform a hard reset. In the quest to save the universe, our figure of legend meets new people and explores new worlds, navigates tense and uneasy relationships with other starfaring races, and embarks on adventures to help resolve new conflicts in order to solidify alliances and unite the known universe against the coming doom. Great battles are fought and won. Conspiracies and mysteries are revealed. Friendships are formed and frayed. And at the end of it all, a great final battle to save life, the universe, and everything. This game, for its flaws, was a critical success remembered fondly by many who played it. It was part of an iconic sci-fi franchise that redefined what was possible in gaming and inspired subsequent titles to follow in many of its footsteps. It was memorable. It was charismatic. But it wasn't Mass Effect. It was Star Control, a game franchise from the 1990s that includes one of the greatest games of all time. It had a massive influence on game development in the years since, and too few people remember it now. Its influence on Mass Effect is so strong that many of Mass Effect's core design elements, themes, and even the central narrative of the first game are almost exact reinterpretations of the narratives and design elements in the Star Control games. So today we're going to take a deep look at the Star Control series, and see how its legacy is borne by modern sci-fi titles like Mass Effect, and try to examine what inspiration and reimagining really mean when it comes to works of art. Star Control, or StarCons to the dopest kids in 1990, was a sci-fi game created by Paul Ritchie and Fred Ford, released for early PCs and the Sega Genesis or Mega Drive, depending on where you lived. It takes place during the height of the It takes place during the height of the fictional protracted war between the Alliance of Free Stars and the evil Urquan hierarchy of battle thralls. It featured a mix of ship versus ship combat and strategic settlement building / colony and resource management. The PC version came on floppy disk, and no, I don't just mean those, then ubiquitous 3.5-inch floppies that have since come to eternally represent the act of saving a file, you know what I mean? That little icon that you see on every program. No, I mean the big-ass 5-inchers, the ones that are the entire reason that we call them floppy disks, because they flop. This is why they're called floppy disks. So this was back in the day when PC games had to utilize clever, tangible tasks to implement copyright protections. In this case, when you start up the game, it asks you a seemingly ludicrous question, and it requires you to respond to it correctly. The only way to know the correct answer is to refer to the little translation wheel doohickey that comes with the game. So this is the wheel. Instant Etiquette Analyzer. What is it? HUDPED. Oh god, where the fuck is HUDPED? There it is. Phlegmorph. Where the fuck is Phlegmorph? Okay, I see it. I'm very impatient. Ors, which is right next to it. And there we go. Caterby. Ignore. The answer is ignore. If you wanted to play with a friend on PC, forget controllers or online multiplayer. You both had to use a keyboard. Wait. Hold on a second. Hold on one second. Hold on. Sorry, you both had to use the same keyboard. But in a good way, not like in that nonsensical NCIS way that we've probably all seen before.
I'm getting hacked.
If Thackeray Binks can't help you double hack, nobody can. The game received a lot of critical acclaim and was beloved by fans for many reasons. It presented a rich, deep world history. It featured a unique array of combatant species and starship designs and capabilities. And it uses an ingenious multiplayer implementation of the kind of spaceflight mechanics that were cemented by the iconic early arcade classic Asteroids.
Star Control 1 was kind of a honeymoon period where we were learning what worked and what didn't work.
And we started with this premise of, let's do the most atomic component of gameplay, which is flying a spaceship and shooting missiles. Pretty much the first thing we made was a 2-player version of Asteroids.
It even featured artwork from Errol Otis, an icon in the world of role-playing games known for his work on early D&D. It received praise for its varied campaign scenarios, which contained well-integrated strategy elements that featured a blend of deploying and positioning your squadron's units for maximum advantage, seizing galactic territory to expand your power and influence in the quadrant, extracting and managing resources across new worlds, and ultimately, finding a path to crush your enemies. In many ways, Star Control's full game mode was akin to a series of highly contextualized, high-stakes, multi-modality chess matches, with the stars themselves as your squares. It was really clever stuff. So, one of the commonly cited shortcomings of Star Control had to do with the game's ability to convey its lore. What I mean by that is, instead of experiencing the aforementioned rich, deep world in-game, much of the lore of the world, or I guess you could say worlds, of Star Control was delivered to players via the game manual. Now, you do definitely get the sense that there's a lot of uniqueness to the alien species in the game. During battles, you can even get a glimpse of how each species operates their ships, and there's a nice solid bit of exposition in the game manual. However, the game's lead authors have both mentioned that they wanted to sufficiently utilize the game itself as a vehicle to tell more of the story. And you know what? A sequel is a great opportunity to do just that.
And then in Star Control 2, we sort of had to figure out why it was all of these races behaved like this in a way that kind of makes sense and is interesting. Why is it that you have an alien race named the Urquan that want to go around enslaving people? That's a bizarre thing to do. So whereas Star Control 1 is this tight strategy action game, but fairly superficial in terms of story, I think we really wanted to go in and investigate those aliens, and that's what pretty much led to Star Control 2.
Ritchie and Ford definitely seem proud of the game they made with Star Control, but with their next foray into the history of the war between the Alliance and the Urquan hierarchy, they wanted to do more in-game storytelling. Then, in 1992, Star Control 2 was released in 1992 for the PC, and later ported to the 3DO, a platform that I actually forgot existed until I started researching this essay. It featured an expansive open world of star systems strewn across hyperspace, TM, and it was the first in the series to really dig deep into the history of the Galactic War and the stories of its major players during the game itself. Instead of jumping into the role of many different alien races across multiple battle scenarios, we now take on the role of a singular human, raised in a fledgling Star Control colony. A distant world, littered with the relics of the ancient and powerful precursors, far outside the influence of the Hierarchy Alliance war. Our human grows up a genius, their intellect and expertise having been nurtured by a lifetime supported by many of humanity's best scientists and a familiarity with precursor technology that's arguably unrivaled in the galaxy. In time, the colony successfully builds a working precursor starship from archival blueprints, and our human is its only capable pilot. The colonists task our human with captaining the ship back to Earth to learn the fate of the Alliance and the fate of humanity. If there was any doubt as to what the legacy of Star Control would be after the first game's release, those doubts were utterly obliterated once Star Control 2 was in players' hands. With Star Control 2, we found the familiar rhythms of the first game's ship-v-ship combat, but we were also introduced to several brand new game systems that brought so much more to the experience than before. We got to zip around space in a new, one-of-a-kind precursor starship, and the game provides cool, flexible options for upgrading and customizing the ship to your needs. I don't know, man. Crunch. Sure. Multi-meal. It's a good thing, too. You really need it. The ship starts off as a fucking sluggish turd. It can barely manage a 90-degree turn. But after some upgrades, you're slipping around planets like a caffeinated grease pig on ice. Beyblade, let it rip! We got to poke around extensively on countless worlds across the quadrant, entering orbit and scanning them for detailed background information and resource prospects from the deck of the the Vindicator. Planets we visit each come with extensive details about their environments, their diurnal cycles, their tectonics, weather, geological and atmospheric composition, even their fucking angular tilt relative to their home star. Like, it's nuts. After collecting information from orbit, we get to send our away team down to the surface in the the Planet Lander. I keep reading from the wrong script. To collect resources, encounter strange creatures, and check things out on the ground below. Now, I know I said earlier that there were, quote, countless worlds before, and people use words like countless hyperbolically sometimes, and sure, you can technically count the worlds, but look at this list. Damn, like, it's a lot. It really is a lot. According to a count of the planets listed on the Star Control, according to a count of the planets listed on the Star Control wiki, a staggering 3,802 distinct planets are featured in the large open world of Star Control 2. Now, yes, plenty of this is procedurally generated, but let me remind you, this game came out in 1992. Consumer internet was like barely a thing at this point, and hardly anybody had a cell phone. A world count like this would be impressive in 2024, let alone 1992. It blew people's minds at the time, and Star Control 2 continues to be one of the most beloved video games ever made. It has a lasting and dedicated fan base to this day. And the sentient creatures we meet are fucking incredible. One great little thing about Star Control 2 that I love, when you speak to the characters throughout the quadrant, you begin to notice that their speech is represented by a unique font each time, which kind of adds to their personality.
Your concerns. We were not always the mystical, aloof, and yet killing, enlightened beings that we are now.
Secrets? You want secrets? Our secrets?
Do not forget to enjoy the sauce.
Welcome back, Captain. You are our favorite customer. Now, what can we do for you today?
Like I said before, Captain, we would like to help, but we are unwilling to risk losing Gaia. Unless you can find a much more compelling reason for us to get involved.
Paul Ritchie actually talked about why they did this in the GDC postmortem that he and Fred Ford held in 2015.
Content of what the aliens are saying to sort of give themselves and their, by extension, their species personality. The typography in this game is very deliberate as well.
I've always loved fonts. I used to read Pogo Possum, this two on the right, and it was the first time I actually saw characters speaking in different shapes of letters. In Star Control, I fiddled around and finally got this font editing system and then was able to go through and generate the fonts for the different characters, and I hope that helped give them a different personality.
Ford and Ritchie provide lots of other great insights into Star Control 2's development throughout this postmortem. I highly recommend watching the whole thing on the GDC Vault if you're interested. It's linked in the description of this video. These aspects of the characters' personalities are even more fully fleshed out in the 3DO port of Star Control 2, where the CD-ROM format afforded the devs the opportunity to add full recordings of voice acting, in addition to text.
A human and an alien starship. How fascinating.
We got to experience incredibly deep dialogues with the diverse, charismatic, and memorable alien races of the cosmos. We really began to get a sense of what each species was like in terms of culture, personality, and ecology. And yes, that includes humans. You do indeed get to go home. At the start of the game, you arrive at the Sol System, our little home in the Milky Way. From a distance, you spot the familiar sight of the third rock from the sun, Earth, the most welcome and comforting sight in the whole game. The crucible of humankind, your home. You approach, and you find the vicious red glow of a slave shield surrounding the pale blue dot. What the hell happened? The aliens you meet have so much to tell you. They share information about the history of the galaxy since the end of the war depicted in Star Control 1. And spoiler alert, shit did not go well for the Alliance of Free Stars. In time, you come to learn just how badly things went. You encounter races that have aligned themselves with the hierarchy, and you see just how much complexity there is in their justifications for making that decision. Some species evoke a deep sense of empathy and sorrow as they explain the awful choices they've had to make in order to survive under the heel of the Urquan, to serve as unwilling cogs in the Urquan war machine, or have their worlds languish under oppressive, impenetrable slave shields, cut off from all life beyond. With others, you witness their gleeful devotion to the Urquan cause, their cruelty on full display. They show you no mercy, even after what appears to be civil conversation and reasonable exchange.
Great hero, you now glamorous and exciting great enemy! Yes, it's going to be lots more fun.
Bruh, I just saved your life. I mean, fuck these guys. The Urquan have rampaged all over the quadrant and have their tendrils wrapped around the galaxy's throat, controlling many star systems and subjugating alien races under their twin doctrines of slavery and annihilation. It becomes really easy to walk away with the impression that the Urquan are unilaterally awful, terrible, no good, evil incarnate, a race hell-bent on inflicting suffering for suffering's sake. Raging beasts, whose species' entire momentum depends on how much of the galaxy there is left to conquer.
We are the Urquan Core. We cleanse our destiny. You will soon die. Make whatever rituals are necessary for your species.
And then the game pulls what I consider one of its master strokes. You eventually get to converse with the Urquan themselves. And they answer for you the question you might have been asking since Star Control 1. Why are you like this? Why do you do this thing? And they tell you. They spell out their history. And to put it mildly, they've been through some shit. You learn that they had a brutal upbringing and had to work against their basest instincts to even become a civilization at all.
Civilization did not come easily to us. We earned it.
Then they reluctantly engaged in a relationship of mutual benefit with other races, agreeing to work collectively and constructively with others, even coming to know one particular species as friends. Eventually, this alliance is shattered when a cruel new race of immensely powerful psychics subjugates and enslaves the Urquan themselves, and psychically compels them to genocide, wiping out the only friends they've ever known. Later, these psychics expand the depth of their malice, tinkering with the very DNA of the Urquan species, causing the race to abruptly split into two subspecies with differing proficiencies and differing philosophies. The Urquan accidentally discover that only in moments of immense pain does the psychic hold over them tend to fade. And so, a great and terrible plan forms. The only way that they will ever free themselves of this psychic enslavement is to inflict tortures upon themselves in perpetuity. Their scientists invent excruciators, wearable torture devices that enable them to barter hour after hour of unrelenting torment for mere moments of emancipation and clarity. But eventually, the madness that this endless suffering engenders reduces their psychic slavers to pale shadows of their former selves. The Urquan win their freedom at last. But their unbridled fury and their raw instinct lead them to the most vile path forward from their centuries of struggle.
When the war was over, the great Core rose from our ranks and declared the path of now and forever. We would cleanse the galaxy. No one would ever threaten the Urquan this way again.
They eventually even descend into civil war with each other, unable to resolve the decision between their two favored means to this end. Will we subject other beings to enslavement or to annihilation? There is no option C. We are the Urquan. We cleanse our destiny.
You have heard our words, and perhaps you understand us a bit better.
And suddenly you realize that you're dealing with an extraordinarily complex villain, and you begrudgingly feel something for them. Compassion slides in, right alongside the contempt. You don't condone their wanton violence and subjugation, obviously, but you weirdly begin to understand why they're doing it. It's clearly the most destructive response to the incredible intergenerational trauma that they've suffered, but still, you kind of get where this is all coming from. As some say, hurt people hurt people. This is definitely true of the Urquan. A villain with this much complexity, depth, and dare I say humanity. A villain that you are forced to empathize with. It's one of many loving touches that really speaks to the incredible amount of thought and intentionality that Ritchie and Ford poured into the design of this game's universe. The Urquan fucking rule. They are so well written, seriously. Star Control 2 was immediately hailed as one of the best games of its era upon release, garnering high praise from games journalists, players, and other developers.
Very well. It's critically acclaimed. This is a Computer Gaming World Review from March of 1993. Star Control 2 has been placed on this reviewer's top 10 list of all time. This has been one of the most enjoyable games to review all year. It's not often that such a perfect balance is struck between role-playing, adventure, and action arcade.
Its acclaim has only grown in the years since. By today, it's widely recognized as one of the best and most influential games ever made. I'll get into more depth about the long-term impact and legacy of this game later on, but for now, we need to move on to the next chapter in this story. So after Star Control 2 was originally released, Accolade, the publisher, approached Ritchie and Ford with plans to develop the third installment in the series. However, Ford and Ritchie were interested in moving on to other projects, and they didn't want to re-experience making another fully scoped Star Control game on the same tight schedule with the same limited budget, so they declined to move forward with the next Star Control game at the time. This left the license for the Star Control IP in Accolade's hands. Because of this departure, Star Control 3 was eventually produced by different developers. And well, we'll see how that went now. So, Star Control 3. It was released in 1996 for the PC, developed by Legend Entertainment, a small developer studio that was reportedly staffed by fans of the original Star Control games. The development team at Legend really leaned on their love for the franchise and the knowledge and insights of the fan community for help with the development of the third entry. Star Control 3 featured some interesting innovations on the existing Star Control formula. This included a return to the resource and colony management style of interstellar expansion first featured in Star Control 1, and the introduction of warp bubble transport instead of hyperspace travel, effectively making transit from star to star happen instantaneously. Kind of like mass relays. Arguably Star Control 3's most notable change— damn it, I hit the fucking mount again. Fuck. Shit. Fuck ass. Arguably Star Control 3's most notable change was the use of FMV sequences for all dialogues, with the team creating articulable puppets for each of the races in the game. Some memorable character designs resulted, though some of the changes are more substantial than others. Some species, like the Urquan, retain a fairly similar design from entry to entry, while others, like the Pakunk for example, are virtually unrecognizable if not for the chunks of dialogue that they repeat from Star Control 2.
Auspicious portents and serendipitous omens have foretold your arrival. Come to the Kasari Quadrant, home of the gentle and playful Pakunk, children of the cosmic light, hobgoblins of joy, seekers of spiritual truth, and other neat stuff like that.
Original lead devs Ford and Ritchie reportedly were not fond of this change either. And to be fair, I'm not entirely sure why the team at Legend thought they also needed to create a puppet for the human and humanoid alien characters you speak with. This thing kinda haunts my nightmares, I'm not gonna lie. It's a little uncanny valley, but when you see it in the game, it's not game-breakingly offensive, and I look back on it with the same fondness I have for other weird things from the 90s that we don't have anymore. Many who were introduced to the Star Control franchise with Star Control 3 love the game, and they remember it fondly. Though, yeah, I mean, look, it's got a contentious position in the Star Control canon, particularly among longtime fans. There's plenty of examples of this online. I get a lot of it. I do. But when Star Control 3 released, it did enjoy praise from critics, and it sold decently well, though not quite well enough to sustain the franchise. It's kind of the outcast of the Star Control franchise, with many longtime fans considering it non-canon. While Star Control 2 is still considered the best in the series, and there is definitely something to this argument, Star Control 2 has appeared on numerous top games of all time lists. Back in 2005, it was ranked by IGN as the 17th greatest game of all time on its 100 greatest games list. It still garners these kinds of accolades, haha, to this day. Developers who have come along since the release of Star Control 2, including and in addition to those who worked on Mass Effect, and we will get there, they frequently cite Star Control as a major influence on their games and their careers. It's a big deal in the history of video games, and way more people need to experience it. In some ways, the pattern that I see with Star Control kind of looks like the pattern of reception with post-2000s Fallout franchise releases, with, you know, most fans considering Fallout New Vegas to be the best modern entry, if not the best overall entry in the franchise. And they're 100% correct. Fallout New Vegas is the shit. Meanwhile, a lot of people kind of balked at Fallout 4, and they really weren't into whatever this was.
I can't do an event.
Okay, I'm just being mean because it's funny. We all know the initial release of Fallout 76 was a colossal dumpster fire. But to be fair, there are lots of people who legitimately enjoy 76, and I am actually happy for them. I kind of want to try it for myself. I haven't because I just don't give a fuck, really, but, you know, I'll get there. Anyway, though it's a little bit sad that Star Control 3 ended up with the reputation that it has, it's pretty clear that Legend Entertainment really tried hard to make a good entry into the series, one that honored the legacy of the games that preceded it. It seems like a lot of love and respect was put into its development, and it kind of sucks to think that ultimately it became a bit of a meme among longtime fans. When I played it, I was brand new to the series. So with that in mind, let's talk about a few of the positives. Interestingly, or at least to me, I was in fact one of those people who played the Star Control games backwards, starting with Star Control 3 in 1996. Growing up, we didn't really have a decent home PC capable of running modern titles until the mid-90s, and I was too young and/or too busy playing Sega Genesis and SNES games to really give much thought to what was going on in the world of PC gaming at the time, so I missed the first 2 entries in the series at first, including the Genesis port of Star Control 1, weirdly enough. I didn't come around to the first 2 games until years later. As I said, longtime fans were sort of mixed on Star Control 3, but as a new player to the franchise, when I did discover Star Control 3, I was hooked. The game starts by basically explaining everything I mentioned at the start of this video, the whole spiel about the story of Mass Effect not really being about Mass Effect, and we are going to get to that real soon, trust me. Much like Star Control 2, after booting up and making your way past the introductory cinematics, the game plops you down in front of the star map, telling you where you are and giving you the choice to either explore the local star system you're currently in, or use your brand new precursor starship to visit other stars in this quadrant of the charted universe. Viewing the multiple planets available for exploration in my own backyard and then zooming out to see the feasibility of my first options for travel, it became immediately apparent to me that this game was going to be a lot bigger and grander than I had assumed at first blush. Now, it's not bigger than Star Control 2, and it certainly doesn't feel bigger. Is it bigger than Star Control 2? I actually need to look that up. I'm not entirely certain. It doesn't feel bigger, though. Anyway, I had to know more. What else was out there waiting for me? And how do I reach it safely? I decided to hop over to the first seemingly inhabited planet within a stone's throw and figure out what was up. Upon arrival, I had a lengthy conversation with another human, who gave me the basic rundown on these questions. I had choices in terms of what questions to ask and what tone I wanted to adopt in response to what this person was saying to me. It was a minor interaction, but it was one that was full of real feelings like confusion, fear, hope, and humor. Sure, yeah, it's a little clumsy, it's a bit of a lore dump and a tutorial, but I was young and this shit was cool, so shut the fuck, cut me some slack. Answers in hand, I left whatever the hell this thing is alone because red always equals danger, and I set out to find my stranded allies and learn more. What mysteries and secrets lie scattered across the dozens of unexplored star systems that hover and twirl balletically on my star map, tantalizingly and temporarily out of reach. God, that was pretentious. They spin. I'm getting tired, I'm sorry. Looking back on it, this might have been my first experience of what one could reasonably characterize as an open world game. After a short jump, I had my first conversation with an alien race, the Spathi. These humble, squishy, utterly obsequious little bootlickers explain more about what's transpired, all while tripping over themselves trying not to offend you, lest you smash their little settlement and all its people to dust.
Our end is at hand. We surrender, oh merciful evil alien.
Also, like Loki, the Eluder, their ship, it's incredibly stupid and I love it. It's so stupid. It was kind of underrated in Star Control 2, and it was a little bit of a limited resource if you neglected to make more of them. And thankfully in Star Control 3 you have pretty free access to them for most of the game. They're really annoying to take on in ship v ship combat because they're super fast and they're hard to target. It's a ridiculous little Scooty Puff Jr. of a contraption, a ship whose main combat capabilities include flying away from enemy combatants at very high speed, while firing rear-facing missiles called backwards utilizing tracking torpedoes. Or butts. They're called butts. And they literally make poop noises when they get fired. I can't make this up. Sorry, Urquan. Your ship's not built for this beef. Then I flew over there, and I met the Vux. These guys suck. They pay you the most egregious backhanded compliments, and they're so clearly pieces of shit that you kinda wonder why you're even teamed up with them. Their design remained pretty intact relative to Star Control 2. Although hilariously, in Star Control 2 you can actually get these shitheads killed on a side quest by setting a ferocious wild alien beast loose in their base. It's entirely their fault, don't worry. And it's so damn satisfying.
Escaped? No, Sub-Commander, this is impossible. It couldn't escape from our strongest containment system. It's what? Decks 5 and 6? 11 crewmen? Sound the alarms, you fool. Where is it now? Engineering report. Engineering. Sub-Commander, seal bulkhead. Sub-Commander, are you listening to me? What are you staring at? Pay attention, Sub-Commander. Give me a report on its position. What are you staring at? Behind me? What?
Okay. So you fly around some more, and much like Star Control 2, you meet other races, explore other worlds and systems, and before you know it, you're knee-deep in a galactic mystery. Along the way, you and your allies begin to establish a foothold in this new sector of space, establishing colonies and resource centers to create a stable presence for the new alliance of the League of Sentient Races, that's what it is. Like its predecessor, the adventure unfolds across a series of battles and dialogues, with Star Control 3's important story elements interspersed with resource management and colony upkeep. You learn so many more interesting secrets about the history of the galaxy, the weird worlds in this quadrant of space, and discover an entirely new network of colorful species whose interactions are filled with tons of character and intrigue. Admittedly, the game does kinda recycle a bit of dialogue from Star Control 2, but it's mostly in the more cosmetic and colorful lines that adorn the substance of the conversations. It doesn't actually reuse main plot dialogue as far as I've ever noticed, but the repetition is a little striking at times. Still, Star Control 3 is actually really fun on balance, in spite of its retrospective reputation. And I played the hell out of it when I was young. Truth be told, I still enjoy it today. Don't at me. So here we are. Our story has come full circle, and we return to Mass Effect. So specifically, the story that I recounted at the intro to this video constitutes the core narrative of Star Control 3. The narrative overlap is most prominent when you examine Star Control 3 and Mass Effect side by side, which explains the arguably unnecessarily assertive title of this video. I know. But the imprint of the Star Control games is all over the Mass Effect franchise more generally. Now, I'm sure at least some viewers clicked on this video specifically for the part where we deliver the play-by-play on how much Mass Effect borrows from a game series from the 1990s. So, let's get this over with. Sure, Commander Shepard's vision of the destruction of all life by an ancient life-consuming race is just like the one the Captain has in Star Control 3. Sure, having the infrastructure of the New World be largely dependent on the technologies of a long-dead ancient race called the Protheans is really similar to the widespread influence the precursors have on the world of Star Control. Sure, the galaxy maps, stellar system navigation, world scanning, and resource extraction via probes and Mako exploration are basically a rehash of the systems established in Star Control 2. Sure, the Asari are sexy blue psychic ladies just like the Cyrene are sexy blue psychic ladies. Sure, the Volus traders are short round guys with big round eyes and low-key Ferengi vibes just like how the Melnorme traders in Star Control 2 are short round guys with big round eyes and low-key Ferengi vibes. Sure, the Reapers being a billion-year-old race and their plan to return every 50,000 years to harvest all sentient life in the galaxy is just like how the Eternal Ones in Star Control 3 are a billion-year-old race who return every many millennia to harvest all sentient life in the galaxy. And big spoiler ahead. Sure, the ancient Prothean race actually being a different group of beings that are hiding in plain sight and unaware of who they once were is just like how the precursors in Star Control 3 are actually not all gone, but instead are actually a bunch of ubiquitous docile space cows that are found on lots of worlds hiding in plain sight and unaware of what they once were. Okay. We made it. Oh, we made it. Oh, God. Okay. All those things are true. The question one might ask now is whether or not all this overlap is actually a problem. To that, I would say, no. Hell, I'm not even the first person to point out that Mass Effect is heavily inspired by Star Control. Articles to the same effect have already been written in the past, and Star Control fans have been pointing this out for years in online spaces. Even other videos already on YouTube, some from as far back as 15 years ago, have similarly pointed out this link. And these are just the ones that pop up with a quick search for Mass Effect and Star Control. This isn't necessarily groundbreaking information. But the main reason I even wanted to make this video is that I know for a fact that there are still gamers out there who loved Mass Effect and have little to no idea of this connection. They've carried on since 2008. Unaware of the link between the beloved modern-day gaming franchise and one of the most adored and influential sci-fi games of all time. When I first played Mass Effect years ago, I pointed this out to other gamers I know, and they were all surprised and fascinated that this connection existed. I figured, what the hell, why not spread the word in the way I know how? And the point here isn't to try and ruin Mass Effect for fans of the series. The ending already did that. point is to help unaware fans of Mass Effect get a better sense of what inspired the series they love. By digging into what inspired the creative works we enjoy, we come to an even deeper appreciation of what people create and why they create it. I, for one, have even more fondness for Mass Effect now that I know how much the people who made it were inspired by Star Control. At the end of the day, they're fans too. Just like me. Just like us. So yeah, no. It's not a problem that Mass Effect shares so much DNA with the Star Control franchise. I would consider it a somewhat lazy critique to point out the ways that any contemporary piece of media is similar to a beloved and influential piece of media that came before it. Art begets art, and I would argue that it's nearly impossible for any creative work to bear none of the impressions of similar works that have preceded it, either in terms of content, technique, inspiration, or the intention of the work. Okay, true, some of the major plot beats of Mass Effect are substantially similar to those of Star Control 3, and many design elements are similar to those introduced in Star Control 1 and 2. To my mind, this actually doesn't speak to a lack of creativity on the part of Mass Effect's designers. Rather, I like to think it speaks to a love for the classics of the genre, a desire to introduce a new generation of gamers to the things that inspired them to tell stories and create interactive experiences in the first place. Mass Effect's development team have been very open about the strong influence that the Star Control series has had on their games. Hell, they downright gush about it in interviews. In an interview with Hardcore Gaming 101, Mike Laidlaw, a former writer at BioWare, freely talks about all the ways that Star Control inspired lots of little things in the Mass Effect games, summarizing its influence by saying, quote, "It's a game that informed one of my core design/writing philosophies, which is that if people care about the characters and the characters care about what's going on, people will care about what's going on." There are even other lesser-known titles in the history of sci-fi gaming that have their stamp on Mass Effect. Starflight was another niche banger from the 1990s that also had a profound impact on my gaming experiences in my youth. I remember being a kid playing Starflight on my Sega Genesis, sending my Mako/all-terrain vehicle down to planet surfaces across the galaxy and mining planets for ore while traversing uncharted terrain, listening to the wacky, blurpy 16-bit sound of its treads rolling across alien ground. Lo and behold, Starflight is also credited as an influence for Mass Effect's open star system exploration. In a 2007 interview with Unreal Engine, BioWare's co-founder and former CEO Ray Muzica explained that both Starflight and Star Control were direct influences on the Mass Effect games, saying, quote, "In terms of games, some of our inspiration goes as far back as Starflight, which created an entire galaxy of procedural planets for players to discover way back in 1986, as well as Star Control. A lot of our team's excitement about the uncharted worlds in Mass Effect comes from imagining what a freely explorable universe would be like inside a very realistic next-gen game." Hell, even Star Control borrows from sources of inspiration. Starflight came out a few years before Star Control, and yet its star map, interstellar travel, and planet scanning systems are all pretty similar to the ones we see in Star Control 2. In fact, one of the lead devs of Starflight was also involved in the development of Star Control. Ritchie and Ford themselves both talk about Starflight's influence on Star Control during their GDC 2015 postmortem.
Starflight actually is not something I can take credit for, but it's something that there was a blissful 2 weeks when I got to work on it. I met Greg Johnson and just became fascinated with him as a person and this idea of an expansive science fiction game that sort of...
Hell, you want to take it back even further, the ship versus ship mechanics that Star Control is best known for could arguably be called direct rips from Space War, one of the first video games ever made. Space War was a ship v ship space combat game developed on the ancient PDP-1 computer at MIT in 1962. It also includes objects that exert gravity that can be used strategically to slingshot your vessel, just like Star Control. And then there's the light nods that Star Control makes to the sci-fi classics that came before it.
Buenos Aires and Washington. We'd lost the war and we knew it, but the Urquan decided to make it real clear. And that's why if you check any of our most recent maps, you won't find Buenos Aires.
I understood that reference. And Mass Effect is far from the only game series to borrow from or be inspired by Star Control. In a series of interviews with Pistol Shrimp Games, Fred Ford's current dev studio, some of the games industry's most well-known developers, all gush about the ways that Star Control shaped their experiences with gaming back in the 90s, and how the franchise helped them hone their approach to game development, design, and storytelling. It's really inspiring.
The amount of thought that went into the different creature species design, the humor, I played that game to death.
Urquan Masters was a huge influence on a game I made called Fallout.
Most clearly inspired by Urquan Masters. Of course, I was also inspired by it when designing Stellaris.
Masters, I mean, you definitely see it in Mass Effect. Got the Mako on the planets, even the way that Mass Effect 3, one of the endings is essentially putting the Earth into that protective state the same way that Urquan Masters starts. The fingerprints are all over the place.
In many ways, the Star Control franchise, and Star Control 2 specifically, could be best summed up in one sentence. It's your favorite video game developer's favorite video game. Taking the things you loved in the past and reimagining them and reintroducing them to new audiences in the present is a fundamental part of the intergenerational process of creative work. And it's very clearly part of the creative process involved in designing Mass Effect. As far as I'm concerned, no harm done. Besides, if you want to engage in thoughtful critiques of Mass Effect, you can easily start legitimate discussions about other things, such as, let's see, there's its use of the ugly equals evil or horns effect trope with some of the races, looking at you, Vorcha. There's the fairly black and white nature of the Paragon versus Renegade morality system, and the fact that it really isn't good versus evil necessarily. It's really more just, do you want to be cooperative or do you want to be an edgelord? And the way it's presented can be a little bit misleading on that front. Let's see, there's the fact that most of the alien species in the story are basically just humans with prosthetic makeup or weird costumes on. Like, I get why a lot of popular media does this. It's probably a lot easier to do motion capture and costuming with very humanoid animations and designs, but it still kind of makes the world a little less interesting to me. My favorites are the Turians because they're described as being avian, which is weird to me because when I look at Garrus, I just see a Catman, so the Turians to me are forever the space tabaxi. Let's see, what else? Oh, there's the fact that the first major emotional decision in the series for Shepard is to choose between saving the biotic who survived trauma and went on to become a person who wants to make the galaxy a better place, or saving the space racist?
It's not racism, not really.
Look, in fairness, I know Ashley experiences some character growth in the sequels, but I don't know why you would make her so unlikable at the outset.
Hey, want me to ask her about her sex life? Might be illuminating.
I literally never save Ashley because she does shit like this. It's such a weird and off-putting choice of characterization for a pretty important character. Just why? Let's see, what else? Oh god, yeah, there's the narrative futility of the Council, despite their seemingly massive presence in the plot of the first game. Whether they live or die is basically irrelevant. Again, weird. There's also the fact that the game kind of distractingly positions Commander Shepard as some kind of space Lothario, and really does a lot to kind of push romantic interactions into your orbit, whether you intend them or not. The playthrough that I did to capture the footage for this essay was especially jarring for me, given that I wasn't even trying to romance Kaidan, and yet ended up involved with him anyway. It was really weird. The dialogue options were not clear enough about that. I was basically just trying to be nice to him, and he assumed that we were dating. I don't know, maybe BioWare was weirdly trying to make some kind of spot-on commentary about the kind of experiences that women have if you play as FemShep. I don't want to give them that kind of credit, though, so I'm just going to say it's kind of weak writing.
What's your opinion on the last mission?
Commander Shepard, let me smash, please.
And then, of course, there's the ending. That fucking ending. Ugh. And don't even get me started on the shallow surface level critiques or the downright thoughtless ones. There's the weird quirks with some of the character models from 2007.
The ambassadors here are very respectful, except for that fungus.
Or the annoying leg anatomy on a bunch of the alien species. This isn't just for Mass Effect, I just find this really bothersome in any character design. Like, quadruped legs and feet are shaped this way for a fucking reason. You know, because they're quadrupeds. Being a biped with sharply jointed calves who tippy toes all goddamn day like this is just wrong. Then there's also Jenkins. The most obvious red shirt I've ever seen in any video game.
I'm itching for some real action.
Or the fact that after all the romance options, they still won't let you romance a Hanar. What? Just don't act like you haven't thought about it. Just me. Just me? Really, just me. Whatever, fuck you guys. But I digress. There are also some genuinely cool innovations that Mass Effect brought to modern gaming. The game series is largely credited with the invention of the popular dialogue wheel style of player-NPC interaction, which allowed for fast, fluid dialogue with many of the characters that the player meets, and it also ruined the Fallout franchise.
Before us Savaldi started slinging rotgut for thirsty caravan hands, we came from a line of Minutemen. My grandpa, Brent Savaldi, was the last. He died fighting raiders just outside Malden. If you could find any of his personal effects, well, it didn't mean the world to me.
It's okay. I'll f your grandpa.
Just be careful, all right? I don't want any more deaths on my conscience.
Though sometimes the dialogue trees commit that common faux pas where it seems like the game is presenting you with multiple dialogue choices, but really they're both just the exact same choice.
Here, Commander. In light of your efforts with the Alcor Ambassador, I would like you to have this small trinket.
What is it?
A small mystery.
What is it?
A small mystery.
The Mass Effect series is also renowned for the ambitious system of tying the narrative of all three mainline entries together across a single game file, effectively making each game remember all the choices the player made in the games that came before. This was incredibly cool and a powerful storytelling feature, really transitioning the Mass Effect games from simple sci-fi RPGs into a comprehensive space opera with a sprawling, dramatic, grandiose storyline and tons of memorable events and characters. The game has brilliant moments, where even the most mundane and seemingly inconsequential conversations can turn into full, multi-game side narratives. For example, this random-ass, low-stakes conversation with a Shepard fan can go a bunch of different ways that span across all three games. Yes, all three games. And it all depends on whether or not you decide to give this guy an autograph. Crazy, right? There are plenty of other points to be made about Mass Effect, both favorable and critical, and most have already been made long before I had anything to say on the topic. You can and should watch or read those for a variety of takes on this modern classic. More to my point, it's not a bad thing that when I first played Mass Effect, one of the first things I said was, this is just Star Control 3 with better graphics and handguns. Which, even after everything I've reviewed here, is still not a completely fair comparison. It's actually a plus. Seeing the things we once loved being reinterpreted and revived, rather than relegated to a dusty storage bin in history's closet, is a great thing for everyone. My vain hope in writing this essay is to convince a few people who played and loved Mass Effect, but have never heard of Star Control, to take the trip into the past, to experience these masterful sci-fi stories and see firsthand the incredible innovations in gaming that Ritchie, Ford, and their team brought to the world of video games with Star Control 1 and 2 way back in the early 90s. Innovations that still hold up even in 2024, or whenever you're watching this, because they will continue to hold up, I promise you. Star Control 2 is so well loved, it received an extensive reboot about a decade after its initial release. In the early 2000s, work began on an open-source fan-made project called the Urquan Masters, which aimed to faithfully recreate the original game for modern PCs, and make it accessible to a new generation of gamers at no cost. It was built using the source code for the 3DO version of the game, and in true based developer fashion, Ritchie and Ford themselves were the ones responsible for releasing Star Control 2's source code to the public. Their hope was that fans would carry the torch forward once the two of them had moved on to other projects.
You know, you had mentioned the open source version. I was wondering how you feel about that.
Well, we actually released it, so we feel bad that we haven't ever made it back to make a sequel yet. And we thought that the least we could do was release the source code to the fans and let them revive it on modern computers, since it didn't really work well once Windows became ubiquitous.
Later, fans fully remastered Urquan Masters in HD, a project simply called Urquan Masters HD, with painstaking modernized updates to the game's artwork and sound. Even more recently, in 2023, under the new franchise name FreeStars, Management of the first Urquan Masters open source rebuild of Star Control 2 was taken up by none other than Ritchie and Ford under their new developer studio label Pistol Shrimp Games. This version of the game was released on Steam as of February 2024 and is still free to play. In fact, it's the one that I used to capture my footage. Not only that, but as if answering the long-forgotten prayers of fans from the mid-90s, Pistol Shrimp Games announced plans to develop another sequel to Star Control 2 / Free Stars The Urquan Masters. A Kickstarter campaign to fund the game's development was launched in April 2024, and it was fully funded in only 3 hours. This will mark the long-awaited follow-up to Star Control 2, as designed by some of the original creators. The new title, Free Stars Children of Infinity, is currently set to release in early 2025, and I, for one, cannot wait. All 3 of the OG Star Control games are currently available in a couple of formats on and off GOG and Steam. There's actually a bit of a contentious legal history as to why multiple versions of Star Control 2 exist at all, which I won't get into in too much detail since I'm a certified not lawyer, but it involves a lawsuit between the original creators of Star Control and Stardock, the company that acquired the rights to the Star Control name from an auction after a series of studio closures and what have you. You know, all the most fun parts of creative work. Dealing with trademarks, intellectual property rights, and licensing. Yay. Stardock also released a Star Control game a few years ago called Star Control Origins. That one also ended up in the middle of a legal skirmish of its own for a while. I haven't played that one at all, so I really can't comment on it, but if you have, let me know what your impressions of the game are. I might eventually check it out myself. I will leave the choice of which version of Star Control 2 to acquire solely up to you, dear viewer. But do yourself a favor and check out the first 2 games when you can. At a minimum, play Star Control 2, or the Urquan Masters, again, whichever version you prefer. Also, give Star Control 3 a fair shake too. It gets roasted a lot in hindsight, but it's a genuinely fun game to play. Seriously though, don't at me. As for me, I'll really be looking forward to see how things shape up with Free Stars Children of Infinity in 2025. Many fans will consider it the real Star Control 3. Paul Ritchie actually ended his tenure with Pistol Shrimp in summer of 2023. As of recording, I have not been able to find what prompted his exit, but I genuinely hope that his departure was an amicable and pleasant one. In Paul Ritchie and Fred Ford, I see a lot of the things that are emblematic of all the joy, wonder, and hope of video games. There's a palpable sense of their passion, their talent, and their creativity on display here. These are the same kinds of traits that have always led humans to want to tell stories and entertain others. I'll always be really thankful that they shared such an inspiring and wonderful gaming experience with us in the Star Control series. And I, for one, am really anticipating what's yet to come in the world of the Free Stars. Till next time, do not forget to enjoy the sauce. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. But seriously, fuck these guys, though.